When standing up for my right to wield a chainsaw, little did I know a single gust of wind would turn my suburban battle into an epic showdown of chaos and camaraderie. The sun beamed down on the modern suburban paradise like a spotlight in a hostage drama, and I was, quite frankly, holding the hostage. A hostage to my own righteous indignation. I can picture it now. Picture me, Jenna Mallory, high-kicking through my yard in a pair of denim overalls, wielding my trusty chainsaw like a sledgehammer of freedom. Branches were kind of like an evil empire, encroaching on my right to a perfectly manicured lawn. Who wouldn't want to engage in some spirited combat against that? And yet, there it was, an ominous letter slithering its way into my mailbox, courtesy of none other than the self-proclaimed matron of suburbia, HOA Karen Bledsoe. I could practically feel her smug expression through the paper as I read the words, "dangerous tool," etched in sharp black ink. Oh, please! My chainsaw was the bringer of order from chaos, the blade of justice against wild, unruly branches threatening my Zen garden. Rage bubbled inside me like a pot of boiling spaghetti, venting my wildness into a chaotic concoction of fury and disbelief. "A dangerous tool?" I exclaimed, looking at my beloved chainsaw resting soundly in the shed. It was a tool, sure, but not the crimson siren of doom Karen was painting it out to be. I mean, really? It's not like I was taking it to a neighborhood barbecue and revving it up for entertainment, no. Just a casual effort to fall under the watchful eye of suburbia's finest while sporting a power accessory. And yet Karen takes it upon herself to protect my sanity from potentially excessive lawn care? The absurdity of it all left me teetering on the edge, half laughing, half wanting to strangle her with the very chains of bulletproof bureaucracy she thrived upon. With an explosive combination of determination and just the right amount of mischief, I decided it was time to wage war, suburban style. While I plotted my grandeur, I peeked through my living room window where Tom Richards, my ever-persistent tree whisperer, was tinkering in his garden, sporting a peace, love, treetops hoodie. When I filled Tom in on Karen's shenanigans, he grunted in agreement, turning his eyes from his prized flowering dogwood to fix them on my amazed visage. "You gotta show her we're not going to just stand down," he declared, nodding wisely, as if he was bestowing upon me the ancient wisdom of battles fought long before. Sure, I could make snarky returns to Karen's letters, but instead I determined it was time to outsmart her, play her game while drawing the line at her arbitrary rules. The day dawned when I would challenge the very essence of our HOA's absurdity. Armed with hidden contempt and a vague plan, I emerged under the sunny skies, dragging Tom into the melee like a trusty sidekick. His wisdom flowed effortlessly as we mapped out the day's events, an educational tree-trimming bonanza designed to showcase my skills and, incidentally, create an unyielding amount of suburban drama. Forging a path behind all the decoration meant this gathering entitled everyone from children to retirees. One could only hope Karen would see that shedding a few branches wasn't the apocalypse she'd apparently envisioned. "Prepare for the resulting pamphlet explosion," I laughed. I can already see the HOA newsletters rolling in. But as fate would have it, unprecedented natural timber-related calamity struck that Saturday morning, in a dramatic twist worthy of a Netflix original, as I was mid-chop and mid-rant. Thank you, Karen, for the unintended motivation. A gust of wind, not unlike one of those divine interventions, swept through. It gathered strength as a massive oak branch succumbed to gravity and, defying all laws of suburbia, came crashing down right on top of Karen Bledsoe's pristine SUV, which was parked oh so nonchalantly in front of her meticulously manicured lawn. The sight of the downfall was nothing short of poetic justice, as I stood there, with my chainsaw held aloft, a triumphant battle cry ringing out in suburban silence. I could practically hear the whisper of sweet revenge in the air. Moments later, I marveled at the grand spectacle of crushed metal and splintered wood, fueled by the giddy sensation of righteous triumph. Little did I know, however, that Karen wouldn't be so easily defeated. Out of her house she stormed, clad in a crisp, tailored blazer, her face a mixture of outrage and shock, like a cartoon character fresh out of a slapstick moment. "What is the meaning of this?" she screeched, waving her arms at the lumber-laden wreck that once represented her precious transportation to weekly linear conventions. Oh, the irony was delicious. Who knew that nature had a sense of humor sharper than any saw? With a grin too wide for my face, I stepped towards the fallen branch, setting the stage for my next act. "Oh, Karen, your complaints about dangerous tools seem to have collided with a far more pressing issue, the very integrity of our neighborhood," I replied, a dramatic flair imbibing my delivery. "How could we let a tree hazard like this remain unattended?" After all, this would give the neighborhood's aesthetics a whole new dimension. The laughter and whispers erupted among the small crowd that had gathered, my backyard warriors cheering me on like I was the unwilling heroine of an epic saga. Little did they know, this confrontation had only just begun. And so, amid the backdrop of suburban mayhem, my battle against Karen transformed into a vibrant tapestry of humor, revenge, and the discovery of backyard camaraderie. As I wheeled the chainsaw back into my shed with a flourish reminiscent of a knight sheathing his sword, I couldn't help but feel empowered. After all, when you live in a world dictated by an HOA Karen, sometimes you need to let nature advocate for your cause, albeit an Ivy League education and one unfortunate SUV at a time. The collective gasp from the onlookers at the sight of Karen's crushed SUV filled the air like an aromatic blend of popcorn and anticipation. I couldn't help but relish the moment, all the pent-up frustration I had lurking beneath my suburban surface bursting forth like a long-awaited release. Karen, meanwhile, stood there, her shock morphing into indignation as she processed the wreckage her precious vehicle had become. I could practically feel her fuming energy radiate like a damp blanket over the crowd, and truth be told, it was the most entertaining spectacle in our HOA's history. Ladies and gentlemen, get your cameras ready. We have a real-life horror movie unfolding right here in Sweetwater Estates, I burst out, gesturing dramatically toward Karen. If this was the stuff of nightmares, let's make it go viral. As she simmered, the spirit of rebellion coursed through me, and I wondered if it was wrong to feel a twinge of glee over the wooden calamity that had befallen her high and mighty vehicle. The gathered crowd murmured, their wide eyes flashing back and forth between me and the wreckage. I mean, really, I called out. What can possibly be more dangerous than a woman with an unchecked obsession for control, mingling with the choppy forces of nature? To add to my escalating confidence, I had Tom cheering in the background like a benevolent coach who knows the underdog is about to make the winning point. May the universe bless his tree-loving heart. Karen, visually seething, finally sprang into action as if her ire could magically lift her SUV back onto its wheels. "You will pay for this," she screeched, turning her fury toward me like a misguided blade. It was almost adorable, really, watching her wave her hands about like a flag signaling for assistance, one that was never going to arrive. I mean, did she honestly think I was going to cower in the face of that theatrical proclamation? I stifled a laugh, trying to keep my composure as the gathering crowd buzzed with nervous energy, some principled bystanders already reminiscing about our glorious rebellion against the abominable allele of suburbia. "Oh, Karen," I exclaimed, waving my hands like an overzealous mime, "let's not forget your grand crusade against my beloved chainsaw. Who knew that fighting for my right to tame the wildness of our neighborhood would end up being this amusing?" My heart raced with exhilaration, the playful bravado of my words countering the tension in the air. Karen's dangerous tools mantra had spiraled into a genuine spectacle that eclipsed her fading status as a neighborhood queen bee. Are we really so concerned about a few potential saw blades when falling oaks loom large? My voice had taken on a theatrical flair, riling up the now surprisingly supportive spectators. Amid her red-faced outrage, I witnessed sweeping expressions of solidarity among my neighbors. A mother with a button-wearing toddler threw her hands in the air, a shiftless bout of glee taking over her previously stressed demeanor. Even the retirees who were always muttering about my free-spirited ways now stood on the cusp of joining my side. Maybe the HOA needs an advisory committee on tree safety instead? An old fella shrilled with a conspiratorial smile. My heart sang at the thought. Who said an HOA couldn't be the catalyst for our little neighborhood uprising 2-0? "We can even have a bake sale," I chimed in. "I'm betting cookies are an excellent way to raise funds for a saw committee." With every chuckle and nod of approval, the once-dreaded assembly room became a spirited battleground, where the forces of humor outmatched the oppressive reign of our HOA hierarchy. Karen must have been ready to choke on her crisply ironed blazer as she found her grip on authority slipping beneath the weight of her own absurdity. "Calm yourself, Jenna. This is not over," she huffed, hands planted on her wide hips like a cartoon villainizing incensed by her own plight. But isn't that just it? It was already over before it began. The gust of wind that shattered her automotive dreams had flung open the door to the possibility of change, and I couldn't help but see the hidden irony of it all. Sometimes, government-sanctioned control of our yards could only be challenged with the arrival of nature's raw, unfiltered chaos. As the laughter from my burgeoning support group built to a crescendo, I can distinctly remember a moment frozen in time where I stood, triumphant, my hands resting confidently on my hips, like the heroine of a carefree suburban comic strip. Long live the wild and the eccentric, I announced, buoyed by the invigorating sense of camaraderie swelling within our neighborhood enclave. Just then, I spotted a flicker of movement from the corner of my eye. Tom was at it again, lurking at the periphery with a grin plastered across his face. He offered a quick thumbs up, which sent a shiver of conspiratorial excitement down my spine. This was bigger than just me versus Karen now. We were at the dawn of a tiny revolution, one uprooted branch at a time. Perhaps it was time for our HOA to realize that a little chaos might not be the worst thing at all. Maybe I indeed had the blade of justice in my corner, and I was ready to wield it like never before, with a raucous crowd cheering for more. The saga had only just begun, and boy did I have a few tricks up my overalls to tame that unruly rulebook yet. I'm not sure if it was delight or disbelief that made me feel as if I'd just landed in the center of a plot twist straight from the land of sitcoms. Karen, the ever-pretentious HOA knight, was now shielding her psychological wounds under the crumpled remnants of her beloved SUV. Yet, onlookers, emboldened by my riotous energy, were basking in the jovial rebellion that had taken on a life of its own. It was as if someone had pulled the proverbial rug from under her high horse, and oh, what a ruckus. "Yes!" I shouted out to the gathering crowd, my voice booming with all the glee of a cheerleader at a last-minute touchdown. Let's take a moment to salute our favorite overzealous ruler as she learns a valuable lesson in humility. Courtesy of Mother Nature. The stagnant air, filled with whey-faced suspense, instantly transformed into a bubbling cauldron of laughter, mingled with gasps and admissions of shared grievances. With my inner rabble-rouser now unleashed, it was the perfect opportunity to play the role of heroic provocateur. You see, people, I continued, summoning my inner motivational speaker, every time we let a Karen take the wheel, we become prisoners to the absurdity of her rules. Like watching a poorly scripted reality show. The smiles and nods swelled around me, treating my ridiculousness as if I were the jester of Sweetwater Estates. And Karen? Well, let's just say she wasn't exactly embracing her royal persona when car-crushing trees were concerned. I turned my gaze toward Karen, relishing every moment of her simmering rage. "Is it too much to ask to be a little, I don't know, rational?" I exclaimed, gesturing dramatically to the wreckage where her shattered SUV lay. "The only thing dangerous here is giving you a megaphone to broadcast your HOA regulations." The surrounding crowd burst into laughter, fueled by a mix of rebellion and the absurdity of the whole situation. You know, I'm starting to think that an HOA meeting on tools of destruction should entail a very serious discussion about ye old silent menace, trees. Because let me tell you, if we're ever going to crown ferocious long-armed oak the king of vehicular woes, then I demand to be on the judging panel. As if on cue, a breeze rustled through the square, flipping a few stray visions of grandeur into the untamed air. In that moment, I could almost see Karen calculating her revenge like some sort of villain in a badly made movie. "You can't do this! You'll rue the day you question the HOA!" she shrieked, hands still firmly planted on those unforgiving hips, as if trying to glue her dignity back together like a shattered vase. The crowd snickered, stifling their laughter within the folds of secret solidarity. "Ruining your day, huh?" I said, relishing the mood the universe had brought us. "I beg to differ. Being banned from those power-driven slices of joy seems so much less thrilling than watching you grapple with tree issues. Who knew our fight was filled with so much irony?" But just as her fury reached a boiling point, I spotted a glimmer of hope in the corner of my eye. It was none other than Tom, popping up like the dapper sidekick in a quirky superhero flick. His shy but supportive demeanor was a balm to the tension rising in the air. He strolled over, hands tucked into his cargo shorts, sporting a knowing grin that was both nonchalant and utterly mischievous. "Jenna," he called out, eyes sparkling. "Remember how I told you that trees can act like overzealous insurance agents? They're like that friend who signs you up for a sketchy health plan, always creeping up on you and eventually crashing your plans." Without missing a beat, I nodded, eager to embrace the absurdity of life's unpredictable lessons, especially when they involved a metaphor so tragically accurate. "Tom, my friend," I chuckled, glancing back at the slow-developing drama between Karen and her burnt-out pride. "You're absolutely spot on. And let's make it a point that we strategize against the unfortunate truth. Being a homeowner doesn't entitle you to wield pitchforks when it comes to neighborly regulations. Shouldn't we be fighting for our right to safety and sanity instead?" The crowd broke into a revitalized set of cheers, pushing against the norms Karen had tried to impose. As we shared amused glances, I sensed we were forging an alliance that could topple tyrannical HOA rulers. And so, as I looked around and took a mental note of the energy building around me, I realized the tides had turned. My allies were actually willing to start plotting the overthrow of the HOA's absurdity, fueled by equal parts excitement and the camaraderie that had been brewing all along. "Ladies and gentlemen," I cried, amplifying my voice, "tonight we gather not just to criticize, we embark on a crusade to embrace the wild, unpredictable spirit of our community. We'll create a movement, the Free Tree Coalition." I could almost hear the euphoric laughter rolling through the crowd as they welcomed the idea of not only entering a battle for our yards, but reclaiming the joy stolen by an entitled few. As the cheers echoed through Sweetwater Estates under the dimming twilight, I knew I had ignited something deeper than a simple scuffle against the HOA. We were meant to become an unapologetic community, embracing our quirks rather than burying them under layers of regulation and control. And I, Jenna Mallory, proudly wielding my truest identity as the unassuming champion of the underdog, had finally discovered the true path of empowerment. A journey that just might involve some unexpected hands-on learning and, dare I say, a chainsaw on the horizon. The laughter reverberated through Sweetwater Estates, bouncing off the walls of conformity and clawing its way into the very fabric of rebellion. Who knew an impromptu gathering sparked by a fallen tree would turn into a neighborhood rally? I glanced over at my burgeoning crew of misfits and supportive souls, a quirky mixture of neighbors who had long grown tired of Karen Bledsoe's relentless reign. It felt cathartic, empowering, like discovering the void in your life could be filled with vibrant colors instead of stark, boring rules. Suddenly, I was leading a movement that even I hadn't anticipated. Tom, sensing my enthusiasm, took a step forward. "You know, Jenna, I always thought you should be the HOA president. Let's see how long it takes before they ban something ridiculous like lawn gnomes." The crowd erupted in laughter once more, some folks nodding vigorously at the idea. It was a hilarious suggestion, though absolutely no one would ever condone Karen's unrelenting standards. Lawn gnomes were sacred little guardians in the realm of whimsical yard decor. "You might be right, Tom," I quipped, letting the playful banter wash over me like sunshine breaking through gloomy clouds. I'd trade my chainsaw for a magic wand if it meant turning Karen into a lawn gnome. The rain resumed its light patter while the last of the storm rumbled in the distance, providing a delightful background symphony to our defiant discussion. I felt electric, charged by the absurdity of it all. Karen was trapped in a metaphorical web of her own making, and we were the spiders ready to spin something magnificent from it. The idea of starting a Free Tree Coalition had ignited my neighbors. The solidarity in our shared grievances began to morph into plans. Could we really do this? Could this be more than a fleeting giggle at Karen's expense? As if sensing the shift in the collective energy, Karen piped up, "You think this is humorous? You wait until the HOA sees the chaos you've all created. You'll regret this, I promise." Her face, once a portrait of smugness, now dripped with frustration and embarrassment, which ironically looked fabulous under the flickering lamplight. It was as if I could see the wheels turning in her head, plotting her next dictatorial decree. It was all comedy gold. "I mean, seriously?" I shouted back, conjuring my best foe incredulous tone. "You're threatening us with the very thing that has left you in turmoil. Mother Nature is clearly on our side." Then an unexpected ally emerged. Barbara from 3 streets down, a usually mild-mannered librarian, joined in. "I'd like to propose the first order of business for the Free Tree Coalition," she chimed in, her confidence boosted by this newfound camaraderie. "A community tree trimming day where we all cut down the branches blocking our sun. And Karen, I hope your SUV is safely parked at home." Barbara's unexpected fiery spirit fueled laughter and high fives all around. "You've just become the hero of Sweetwater, Barbara," I exclaimed, laughter bubbling up uncontrollably. The idea wasn't just entertaining, it was revolutionary. Then I couldn't resist it. "What's next, lightsaber duels to decide the HOA regulations? Let's have an open vote. All in favor of completely erasing arboreal overreach in our neighborhood say, aye." The uproarious chorus of "A" filled the evening skyline. I must admit, I felt like a conductor leading an orchestra unaware they were sounding off key. Yet, amidst the chaos, something genuine emerged. The laughter wasn't directed solely at Karen anymore. It became a call to arms, an awareness that we were tired of being silenced and pushed into corners. This was more than just a spat over a tree. It was a fight for our right to live without the fear of absurd regulations. Just as my heart swelled with hope, I felt startled by the sudden silence that enveloped us, a pause so thick you could practically cut it with a chainsaw. I wouldn't say my heart stopped, but the next part was nothing short of cinematic. Karen, red-faced and fuming, yelled out, You will pay for this, once I report your rebellious antics. But she'd barely finished her tirade before the ironies I adored came tumbling back. Wind gusted, and with it, a determined branch from that very tree, seemingly empowered by our rebellion, snapped out of place and caused a subsequent pile of twigs and leaves to cascade onto her pristine driveway. "What a way to lose your status, Karen!" I burst out, uncontrollably laughing as everyone erupted into applause, spontaneous and united in our joyous commotion. And as I chuckled at Karen getting tangled in her own web, I couldn't help but feel that we had just struck a profound chord in the humdrum of homeowner regulations. This movement wasn't just for a chainsaw. It wasn't even strictly about trees. It was about standing up against entitlement and absurdity, about reclaiming our own spaces and joy that had long been stifled by one woman's whims. The Free Tree Coalition was born from the most ridiculous circumstances, and I knew would mark the start of a much larger journey, one full of laughter, community, and perhaps just a hint of rebellion against the forces that seemed so ridiculously powerful until that very moment. In that bubbling aura of camaraderie, it dawned upon me that this was just the beginning. The next chapter would involve not just laughter, but deliberate plans and community projects that would shatter the chains of absurdity that had held our neighborhood hostage. The night air was thick with laughter and a sense of camaraderie that reverberated off the walls of conformity that Karen Bledsoe had erected like a fortress. As I stood amidst my spirited neighbors, I half expected the heavens to part and a celestial choir to belt out, "Hallelujah." My cheeks hurt from grinning so wide, and my heart raced with the thrill of rebellion. Who would have thought that a stormy day, a chaotic tree, and a somewhat deranged collection of disgruntled homeowners would lead to the birth of the Free Tree Coalition? I felt as if we had just drawn our battle lines over a game of lawn darts, the stakes ludicrous yet somehow profoundly liberating. But of course, what's a good rebellion without a clash of wills? Just as I was basking in our communal victory, the heady scent of revolt wafting through the air like freshly mowed grass, there came Karen, towering ominously like a blustery thundercloud. The lady with the punctuality complex had stormed in, dragging her spite like a soldier hoisting a flag of defeat. "I will report every one of you. Enjoy your little party today," she screeched, indignant and vibrating with what I could only assume was the fury of 1,000 bees. It was hard to take her seriously when her hair weighed more than most of my home decor. "Oh, Karen," I called back sweetly, winking at the gang of supporters around me. "I know how much you love a bit of drama, but come on! We were just having fun with your tree situation. It's poetry in motion." The crowd erupted into laughter, making Karen's face transform into a comic shade of crimson that would make a tomato jealous. Yet the chaos was not limited to her emotions. In a cinematic twist, a group of intrepid homeowners spontaneously decided that it was time to unite under our revolutionary banner, armed with tools, mostly rakes and some trusty hedge trimmers because, let's face it, I wasn't actually about to hand over my precious chainsaw to anyone, especially Karen. Our squad began to rally. "Together we will tackle the tree issue and reclaim our sunlight, one branch at a time," I proclaimed grandiosely, momentarily picturing myself standing on the roof of my denim overall-clad chariot, leading the charge into a horticultural war. Tom, ever the enthusiast, chimed in. "And now let's get ready for some severe pruning." From there, plans spiraled not just toward trimming unruly branches, but also for planting new, glorious greenery in our yards. It was a full-on uprising of neighborly goodwill, sprinkled with a touch of horticultural mayhem. As the night wore on, we huddled together like a band of merry warriors, exchanging strategies and sharing our personal grievances over warm cups of coffee. Tom played an essential role as our informal horticulture specialist, taking the lead as the wild ideas poured out. What if we held a community garden event, or turned our streets into edible landscapes? Each suggestion floated freely, blossoming into laughter and mischievous side-eye at Karen's impending response. Not that we were scared of her. Our rally felt less like a neighborhood meeting and more like a carnival combined with a planning session for an epic heist. "Chainsaws for all," I barked dramatically, hardly able to contain my mirth. I could see it now. A triumphant gang wielding gardening tools and wielding righteous indignation like helmets with vibrant confidence. Then it hit me. Not all heroes wear capes, but it seems some of us wear overalls, especially when plotting community-oriented rebellion. The very absurdity of our situation wasn't just entertaining. It was a reminder that the Karen caricature often falls flat when met with genuine laughter and fortitude. "This is much bigger than just your tree, Karen," I shot off, feeling a high five-ready spark brewing within our little circle. This is about freedom. Freedom to enjoy our outdoor spaces, the right to love our trees, even if you think they're the watchers of the wild holding secret meetings every night. With every joke, we chipped away at the punishing grip of the HOA's rules. Each witty quip was akin to a direct hit on the absurd pedestal Karen had built for herself, and you could practically see the anger fizzing off her like soda pouring from a shaken can. With time slipping away, I could feel the giggles simmering down into a realization. We were mere hours away from the next HOA meeting, and while I should have been nervous, I found myself impulsively energized. All of this felt like the beginning of a movement, one that would reject Karen's cling to superiority and rewrite the rules of our community. What if we flooded the meeting with our ideas for projects? I suggested, eyes twinkling with grand plans. Picture it, carpentry skills that will leave our homes looking like the amazing before and after shows. Let's dazzle the HOA with how much fun we can actually have. They won't know what hit them. It was more than a wishful thought. It was a legitimate game plan to make our dreams of a happier community tangible amidst the paperwork and legalese. And so, as the moon began to hang high and the laughter faded into a comfortable hum of excitement, I couldn't help but pinch myself. The Free Tree Coalition had taken root, and we were poised to turn the restrictions of our beloved HOA on their heads. Suddenly, Karen's nagging voice underneath the mountain of bureaucratic nonsense was less of a threat and more of a challenge that sparked a fire deep within my chest. This wasn't merely about trimming branches. It was about uprooting entitlement and planting joy. A call to arms for democracy, community, and perhaps even a little mayhem awaited us. After all, what's life without a little adventure and, of course, a chainsaw or two on the horizon? The morning after our raucous gathering, I woke up feeling like a cross between a superhero and a nursery rhyme. The sun peeked through my window, illuminating my disheveled hair and decidedly unglamorous pajamas. It was the kind of day that begged for action, the kind that thrummed in my veins with a wicked energy. I had dreams of uprooting not just Karen's tree-worshipping traditions but her entire reign of HOA terror. Fueled by leftover caffeine and audacity, I mapped out a wild plan to confront the board with all the flair of an Oscar-winning performance. We weren't just going to be a coalition. We were about to become the avenging champions of gardening and DIY liberty. Stepping outside, I was greeted by the glorious sound of Tom humming a jaunty tune as he fiddled with his various gadgets in the yard. If there was anyone who could make gardening alluring, it was him. "Looking chipper, Jenna," he called out, waving his trowel like a pirate captain brandishing a sword. "Are we prepared to unleash our knowledge on the unsuspecting attendees of the HOA meeting?" His enthusiasm matched my own, and I felt the buildup of our combined excitement practically crackle in the crisp morning air. "Oh, Tom, it's more than knowledge. I'm ready to drop truth bombs wrapped in wildflower bouquets." I tossed back, the pair of us dissolving into giggles that melded beautifully with the rustle of leaves around us. We gathered the troops for a pre-meeting pep rally, huddled around Tom's yard like toddlers encircling a tale of daring do. "What's our battle cry?" I barked out dramatically, kicking my leg in a way that made me instantly regret my lack of coordination. "We shall be the guardians of our green. No one messes with our lawns." The chorus of laughter that followed reassured me we were all collectively insane in the best way possible. We had an epic plan. To present the HOA with our ideas filled with community enrichment and tree involvement. Yes, trees. Plans for community workshops and garden beautification events, all to contrast with Karen's dreary obsession over compliance. Each suggestion bounced off the others and gradually evolved into a manifesto that would make Karl Marx envious. As we traipsed over to the HOA meeting towards our country club-style showdown, I could feel the tension mingling with our bubbling eagerness. Tom fiddled nervously with a brochure he had printed titled, "The Plants Against Entitlement Initiative." His eyes sparkled with mischief, and I grinned back at him, high-fiving him momentarily. Next to us were Barry and Linda, the self-proclaimed resident gossip and the neighborhood's sunset enthusiasts, ready to pitch in with their humor and sass. The atmosphere was electric. It felt as if we'd traded in our simple gardening tools for swords of satire, ready to slice through Karen's pretentious wins like she was a piñata stuffed with regulation fluff. As we entered the HOA meeting room, I noted Karen seated like a queen on her throne, with her perfectly coiffed hair and tailored blazer radiating superiority. The moment I caught her eye, my heart skipped a beat, not from fear, but from the undeniable thrill of it all. The tension fortified me. I was not just fighting for me, but for the entire vibrant community around me. "Welcome, welcome," bellowed the HOA president, clutching his clipboard like a lifeline. "I hope everyone has taken note of our abhorrent tree concerns. We need to address it seriously. I half suspected he'd been trained by a monotone robot. My heart pounded like a drum, and I seized this moment as if they just handed me a microphone at a rock concert. "Excuse me," I called, raising my hand as if I were in kindergarten and had the perfect answer to the teacher's question. What if, instead of worrying about chainsaws, we focused on community spirit? What if we embraced our trees as vibrant members of our community? Let's bring in our kids. Let's plant together. Let's form a gardening club. Stump the entitlement. The laughter erupted through the room like a rainstorm breaking through a drought. I felt eyes flickering between amusement and disbelief as I pitched our grandiose ideas, glowing community gardens, visitors from the community to share their gardening experiences, and plant shares to bolster our green-thumbed efforts. Every absurdity I invoked only served to bolster our cause and tickle the funny bones of the room, including a bemused Karen whose jaw I could feel dropping. By the end of the meeting, the HOA board members were sifting through our outrageous plans with hesitant enthusiasm, at least convincing enough to warrant a graceful reconsideration of Karen's chainsaw ban. A gardening club that could actually cultivate community. One of them stuttered, confidence wavering as excitement danced in their eyes. It really was happening. I couldn't stop the grin that lit up my face. And Karen, I paused dramatically, just think of all the trees we could plant. Better yet, we could plant new ideas together. Maybe it can become a transformational retreat for you. A collective gasp swept through the room. Oh, the irony. Karen's face resembled a beetroot, and the absurdity of the moment because she had to consider us at least a bit reasonable despite her disdain. As we poured out of the meeting chamber hours later, each of us beaming, I felt the freedom buoying our spirits. We'd struck a glancing blow to the fortress of entitlement that Karen had built, one overgrown hobby at a time. Who would have thought my wild hair day could turn into a resounding victory? I laughed, as a sense of camaraderie blossomed amongst the ranks. We were not just a ragtag band of rebels, we were garden warriors, poised to reclaim our rights to chainsaws and creativity. Or at least, that's how the saga would evolve. The next chapter of our community's tale was only just beginning, ripe for the picking. And so, as I looked ahead, my mind was already racing towards the next escapades that awaited the Free Tree Coalition and me, like a bottle of champagne just waiting to pop open. The next day felt electrifying, like a race car revved to the limit, as I prepared for our inaugural meeting of the Stump the Entitlement Gardening Club. I could barely contain the excitement bubbling in my chest, like a soda bottle just waiting for the cap to pop off wildly. Sure, it was all born from a bizarre HOA meeting where chainsaw regulations were the stuff of legend, but now I was on a mission to reshape our community into a green paradise. Armed with my trusty gardening gloves, more of a fierce warrior's gauntlet than mere hand protection, I strutted into Tom's yard, which had officially become our chosen battlefield for this horticultural revolution. Tom greeted me with a smile that could disarm 1,000 HOA warriors. He wore his usual casual charm, showing off the latest addition to his growing sanctuary. A vibrant statue of a gnome dressed in a tuxedo, apparently prepared for a magical soiree in the garden. "Are we ready to cultivate some chaos?" he teased, tilting his head as if sizing me up for a spectacular duel. "Absolutely. Let's turn those chainsaws into tools of radical bliss," I chuckled, excitedly bouncing on my toes. Little did Karen know, we weren't just looking to liberate trees. The blazing gust of rebellion was about to blow that HOA's well-guarded rules to smithereens. And so, our first gathering began. I invited our neighbors for a Meet the Green Team barbecue. The moment we declared grill and garden on the flyer, I knew it would be something special. A clash between Karen's uptight regulations and our carefree enthusiasm was brewing. The families assembled, each with their quirks. Barry brought nothing less than a horizon of vegetable marinades. Linda arrived with desserts themed around nature, adorned with edible flowers. I mean, who doesn't need a cupcake that looks like a tiny flower bed? It was like we were pulling together a mismatched quilt of personalities, all piecing together for one purpose: to nail the very essence of our community spirit, the glorious celebration of green. As the sun dipped lower, golden rays flickering through the branches, we fed our bellies and hearts, then shifted towards the thorny subject of Karen and her dictatorial reign. Barry cleared his throat, inciting a hush among us as we circled around a table stacked with seedlings. "You know, Karen's ban on the chainsaws might be nothing but a cover for her jealousy of our creativity," he said, a smirk dancing on his lips. Laughter erupted, and I relished the rush of solidarity. We were becoming a force, ready to break the chokehold of absurdity the HOA had placed upon us. Ah, the chainsaw versus gnome conundrum. Who would have thought? I chimed in half-jokingly, signaling our shared resolve. Now is the moment to spread joy. With petals and puns, exactly what she didn't expect. Fueled by laughter and ridiculous enthusiasm, we rallied together like a troop of rambunctious squirrels, determined to show the world, starting with Karen, that our community could indeed be as vibrant as a sunflower field in midsummer. I whipped out a whiteboard, because obviously who doesn't prepare for a meeting like this? And we brainstormed creative strategies to counter Karen's rules, from hosting plant swaps to launching wildflower seed bombs via slingshot. Just a thought. More ideas blossomed, and we could feel the resonance of our combined imaginations, making the specter of Karen's tyrannical tree control shrink into nothingness, one laugh at a time. But as the dusk painted the sky in swirls of lavender and blush, I remembered I had perhaps poked the proverbial bear too hard. What if we just embraced Karen? I exclaimed dramatically, throwing my arms wide open. What if we decorated her lawn together, turned it into a sunflower haven, and dubbed it Karen's Wildflower Kingdom? It could be our ultimate output of irony. The idea resonated with everyone, fueling a frenzy of giggles and wild suggestions that might end in gardening crime but felt utterly justified. I could almost see the horror on her face when she discovered her neatly trimmed hedges transformed into a whimsical jungle, draped with colorful streamers and flower crowns. Oh, visions of this prank ignited riotous encouragement in our gathering, and we left with smiles broad enough to cover the walls of the grumpiest HOA. In the following weeks, we executed our plans with the zeal of artists preparing for an epic unveiling. Between planting gardens and building collectively goofy but adorable signage that read, "Free Chainsaw Zone," we pushed against the boundaries that had confined our community too long. We even caught glimpses of Karen lurking from her window, her face a mix of bewilderment and rage as I genuinely waved, while pulling my own petunia plants from my overgrown garden like it was an art piece. It was simply too delicious watching the seeds of joy take root while the grip of her absurdity weakened. Engulfed in this smorgasbord of chaos, I found myself energized, not just as a crusader for plants and trees, but as a people's champion, thrumming with an ambition to inspire all who crossed my path. And wouldn't you know it? Just as our newfound revolutionary tendencies reached their peak, the grand showdown was at hand. Karen, unable to ignore the blooming riotous colors of our discontent, raised her voice against the dangerous factions threatening to infiltrate her immaculate fortress of flora. But guess who was collecting signatures? The community was unraveling their own tapes of compliance, each signature a testament of support for the cause, and for the first time I felt the surge of triumph echoing deep within my heart. In this neighborhood, we're planting culture and joy. Who knew plants could be such warriors? I could almost feel the seeds of rebellion exploding in the wake of our mirth, knowing there was nothing quite as delightful as turning garden gnomes into our charming champions of change. And so, as dusk fell on another beautifully ridiculous day, I sat in my yard, watching our little garden antics spread like wildfire among neighboring lawns, my heart swelling with joy and mouth cramping from grinning. With a glass of iced tea in hand, and my wild red hair catching the wind, I raised a celebratory toast to the absurd yet victorious saga we'd woven together. To the Free Tree Coalition, I toasted, feeling the tapestry of our community swelling in my chest. May we always arm ourselves with dirt and sass against absurdity. After all, the only thing better than gardening was a riotous adventure that came from refusing to bow to the whims of entitlement. I could not wait to see where this wild journey would take us next.